Forests cover about 48% of Austria, which amounts to approximately 4 million hectares. The majority of this land is owned by 145,000 farmers and family forest owners, with an average size of 9.2 hectares each. In addition, larger forest companies manage up to 34,000 hectares and are owned either by families or the church. The federal state owns 15% of the forest via the Austrian Federal Forests or Österreichische Bundesforste. Another minor part belongs to municipalities and provinces, with Vienna being number 2 after the Austrian Federal Forests ÖBF. The foundation for the high share of forest land in Austria was laid by the Imperial Forest Act, Reichsforstgesetz, under Emperor Franz Joseph in 1852. It was valid from January 1, 1853 in all crown lands belonging to the monarchy at that time. At the time, the demand for wood underwent a strong increase due to the needs of industrialization. The Imperial Forest Act was designed to stop and prevent deforestation at high altitudes, without ensuring adequate reforestation. The Emperor's decision made forest policy an imperial task, and it has remained an important federal task until today. The Forest Act was in place for over 100 years, until a new one came into effect on July 5, 1975. The Forest Act of 1975 introduced a completely new aspect, since the preservation of sustainability and the various forest services such as wood production, protection, welfare and recreation became legally binding. The term sustainable, or nachhaltig in German, was first created by the German forester Hans Carl von Carlowitz at the end of the 17th century. He wrote a book on forestry and is considered the creator of the term sustainability in silviculture, which is nowadays a widely applied concept across all economic and ecological sectors worldwide. At the time of its creation, it stated that wood harvest should only be allowed up to the amount to which the forest is able to regrow and regenerate itself within a foreseeable time. Today, sustainable forest management stands for the conservation of species and habitats, as well as wood production and other forest products for the well-being of rural communities, the population and wood industry. Consideration of species conservation means, among others, that a certain amount of dead wood, with its decomposing organisms, should remain in all forests. However, such nature conservation aspects need to take forest protection measures into account in order to prevent an undesirable propagation and spread of forest pests such as bark beetles.
Dead
wood in the forest is very important, as it is not a suitable breeding ground for bark beetles anymore, but very important for other bark and wood-breeding insects. And these are the nutritional basis for various animals, such as woodpeckers, songbirds, or the red wood ant. Among others, such animals are important and required for a natural balance in our forests. Besides nature conservation, the forest has been recognized as the most important terrestrial carbon sink within the last years. At present, forests are the only CO2 sink in the Austrian greenhouse gas balance. It stores about 985 million tons of carbon in the soil and trees. Forests produce the oxygen needed for life, accommodate and protect various forest animals and plants, and used for leisure, sports and recreation. Moreover, forests provide jobs for about 300,000 people in Austria, directly and indirectly. Additional ecological aspects were included in the Forest Act Amendment of 2002, in which nature was given more time to regenerate naturally and genetic diversity was considered. The Forest Act in its current version determines the preservation of forests and the forest floor and secures various ecosystem services and sustainable forest management. The Act contains elements of spatial forest planning, as well as the regulation of protection forest zones, as in Austria. Forests are not only an economic area, but also serve as protection against natural hazards and disaster. In mountainous areas, forests help to stabilize the soil and protect the environment from landslides, avalanches, and rockfall. These types of forests, so-called protection forests, are being managed according to the strict rules of the Forest Act, requiring regular and sustainable management. Especially small forest owners living increasingly in urban areas need to be aware of that. The Forest Act also regulates the protection of people from landslides and avalanches through torrent control and avalanche barriers. The protection of the forest against natural disasters and pests, such as the bark beetle, is part of this. Moreover, the Forest Act defines at what age and where trees can be harvested and regulates the reforestation of bare areas, either by natural regeneration or by planting trees suited to the local site conditions. A forest owner cannot just harvest as much wood as he wants until the point of clear cutting, but needs to follow the strict guidelines of the Forest Act. Starting at an area of 0.5 hectares, a legal permission from the responsible regional forest authority is required. Most importantly, every forest area needs to be reforested after harvest. Assistance and support for sustainable forest management are being given by the regional forest authorities and the Chamber of Agriculture. The most important topic of the Forest Act is the preservation of forest land. This implies that wherever a forest exists, this forest must remain in the future. The Forest Act also enables forest owners to select their tree species. This is important in the context of climate change, so that we can introduce tree species which are better suited for future climate conditions. Secondly, the Forest Act supports and facilitates natural regeneration. Thus, we aim to regenerate the forest through seed production of old trees, as we can assume that this natural regeneration is most likely adapted to climate change. Artificial regeneration requires seedlings grown from forest seeds of certified forest stands. To guarantee a high quality of the forest seeds and seedlings and the certainty of their origin, Forest Reproductive Material is regulated in the Federal Act on Forest Reproductive Material. The production of forest plant material, and prior to that, the forest seed production, is a very important task, since it is of utmost importance to provide forest owners with the appropriate seeds and seedlings. Thus, forest reproductive material is regulated by the EU on the one hand, and on the other hand by respective national laws. Here, the national authority, which is the Federal Forest Office, is in charge. This concerns, among others, the approval and registration of appropriate seed stands, which should be made available for forest owners and managers.
Dem Waldbesitzer und dem Waldbewirtschafter zur Verfügung stehen.
The uncontrolled utilization of forest reproductive material was already acknowledged in the 19th century under Emperor Franz Joseph, when the first station for forest seed control was founded in Mariabrunn, Vienna. Nowadays, seeds are either harvested in forest seed orchards or within approved seed stands. For example, this forest in Lower Austria was certified as approved seed stand of sessile oaks by the Federal Forest Office. In addition to the initial seed stand approval, any seed harvests within such stands are being controlled and granted by regional forest authorities, which issue a master certificate for each seed harvest being made. Legally speaking, this seed stand is being entered into the National Register of Basic Material after being approved. An important aspect is the labeling of the seed stand with its register reference. It includes the region of provenance and the altitudinal level, which are the two most important criteria for ecologic forest classification in Austria. This allows forest owners and managers to identify the most suited reproductive material for their forests. Thanks to all these legal measures, the forest ecosystem in all its complexity and entirety is preserved and sustainably managed for future generations.